We are continuing with The Pie in the Patty Pan by Beatrix Potter. If you'll recall, Ribby, a sweet little cat, invited Duchess, her best friend dog, over for tea and pie and promised that Duchess could have the whole pie. Duchess is very afraid that the pie will be a mouse pie, which it is, and so Duchess made her own pie to bring over to Ribby's house and switch the pies out in the oven. We don't know if she was successful, but currently Ribby and Duchess are both at Ribby's house, and they're about ready to sit down to tea. Ribby asks Duchess, "Do you take sugar in your tea, my dear Duchess?" "Oh yes, please, my dear Ribby, and may I have a lump on my nose?" "With pleasure, my dear Duchess. How beautifully you beg, how sweetly pretty." Duchess sat up with sugar on her nose and sniffed. "Oh, how that pie smells good. I do love veal and ham. I meant to say mouse and bacon." She dropped the sugar in confusion and had to go hunting under the tea table, so she did not see which oven Ribby opened in order to get out the pie. Ribby set the pie upon the table, and there was a very savory smell. Duchess came out from under the tablecloth, munching on sugar, and sat in the chair. "I will first cut the pie for you, and I'm going to have a muffin and marmalade," said Ribby. "Do you really prefer muffin? Mind the patty pan. I beg your pardon," said Ribby. "May I pass you the marmalade?" said Duchess hurriedly. The pie proved extremely toothsome, and the muffins light and hot. They disappeared rapidly, especially the pie. "I think," the Duchess thought to herself, "I think it would be wiser if I helped myself to the pie," though Ribby did not seem to notice anything that she was cutting when she was cutting it. What a very small, fine piece it has cooked into. I do not remember that I minced it up so fine. I suppose it is quicker than in my own oven. How fast Duchess is eating, thought Ribby to herself as she buttered her 5th muffin. The pie dish is emptying rapidly. Duchess has had 4 helps already and is fumbling with a spoon. "A little more bacon, my dear Duchess," said Ribby. "Thank you, my dear Ribby. I was just feeling for the patty pan." "The patty pan, my dear Duchess?" "The patty pan that held up the pie crust," said Duchess, blushing under her black coat. "Oh, I didn't put one in, my dear Duchess," said Ribby. "I don't think it's necessary in pies that are made of mouse." Duchess fumbled with the spoon. "I can't find it," she said anxiously. "There isn't a patty pan," said Ribby, looking perplexed. "Yes, indeed, my dear Ribby. Where can it have gone to?" said Duchess. "There most certainly was not one, my dear Duchess. I disapprove of tin articles in my puddings and pies. It's most undesirable, especially when people swallow them in lumps," she added in a lower voice. Duchess looked very much alarmed, and continued to scoop the inside of the dish. "My great aunt Squintina, grandmother of cousin Tabitha Twitchit, died of a thimble in a Christmas plum pudding. I never put any article of metal into my puddings or pies." Duchess looked aghast and tilted up the pie dish. "I only have 4 patty pans, and they are all in the cupboard." Duchess set up a howl. I shall die, I have swallowed a patty pan. Oh, my dear Ruby, I do feel ill." "It is impossible, my dear Duchess. There was not a patty pan." Duchess moaned and whined and rocked herself about. "Oh, I do feel dreadful. I have swallowed a patty pan." "There was nothing in the pie," said Ribby severely. "Yes, there was, my dear Ribby. I am sure I have swallowed it." "Let me prop you up on a pillow, my dear Duchess. Where do you think you feel it?" "Oh, I feel it all over me." "My dear Ribby, I have swallowed a large tin patty pan with a sharp scalloped edge." "Shall I run for the doctor?" I will lock up the spoons. Oh, yes, yes, that's Dr. Maggotty, my dear Ribby. He is a pie himself. He'll certainly understand. Ribby settled Duchess into the armchair before the fire and went out and hurried into the village to look for the doctor. She found him at the smithy. He was occupied in putting rusty nails into a bit of ink, which he obtained at the post office. "Come on, ha-ha," he said, with his head to one side. Ribby explained that her guest had swallowed a patty pan. "Spinach, ha-ha," he said, and accompanied her with alacrity. He hopped so fast that Ribby had to run. It was most conspicuous. All the village could see that Ribby was fetching the doctor. "I knew they would overeat themselves," said Cousin Tabitha Twitchit. But while Ribby had been hunting for the doctor, a curious thing had happened to Duchess, who had been left by herself sitting before the fire, sighing and groaning and feeling very unhappy. How could I have swallowed it, such a large thing as a patty pan? She got up and went to the table, and felt inside the pie dish again with a spoon. No, there is no patty pan, and I put one in, and nobody has eaten the pie except for me, so I must have swallowed it. She sat down again and stared mournfully at the grate. The fire crackled and danced, and something sizzled. Duchess stared. Duchess started. She opened the door of the top oven. Out came a rich, steamy flavor of veal and ham, and there stood a fine brown pie, and through the hole in the top of the pie crust there was a glimpse of the tiny little patty pan. Duchess drew a long breath. Then I must have been eating mouse. No wonder I feel ill. But perhaps I should feel worse if I had really swallowed the patty pan. Duchess reflected. What a very awkward thing to have to explain to Ribby. I think I will put my pie in the backyard and say nothing about it. When I go home, I won't run around and take it away. She put it out in the back door and sat down again by the fire and shut her eyes, and when Ribby arrived and the doctor came, she seemed fast asleep. "Come on, ha-ha," said the doctor. "I am feeling much better," said Duchess, waking up with a jump. "I'm truly glad to hear it, as he has brought you a pill, my dear Duchess." "I think I should feel quite well if you only felt my pulse," said Duchess, backing away from the magpie, who sidled up with something on his beak. "It was only a bread pill, and you had better take it and drink a little milk, my dear Duchess." Come on," said the doctor, while Duchess coughed and choked. "Don't say that again," said Ribby, losing her temper. "Here, take it, this bread and jam, and get out into the yard." "Gammon and spinach, ha-ha-ha," shouted Dr. Maggotty triumphantly outside the back door. "I'm feeling very much better, my dear Ribby," said Duchess. "Do you think that I'd better go home before it gets to be dark?" "Perhaps that might be wise, my dear Duchess. I will lend you a nice warm shawl, and you shall take my arm." "I would not trouble you for your worlds. I feel wonderfully better. One pill from Dr. Maggotty. Indeed, it is most admirable, if it had cured you of the patty pan. I will call directly after breakfast to ask how you have slept." Ribby and Duchess said goodbye affectionately, and Duchess started home. Halfway up the lane, she stopped and looked back. Ribby had gone in and shut her door. Duchess slipped through the fence and ran around the back of Ribby's house and peered into the yard. Upon the roof of the pigsty sat Mr. Dr. Maggotty and 3 jackdaws. The jackdaws were eating a pie crust, and the magpie was drinking gravy out of a patty pan. "Come on, ha-ha," he shouted when he saw Duchess's little black nose peeping around the corner. Duchess ran home, feeling uncommonly silly. When Ribby came out for the pailful of water to wash up the tea things, she found a pink and white dish laying smashed in the middle of the yard. The patty pan was under the pump where Dr. Maggotty had considerately left it. Ribby stared with amazement. "Do you ever see the like? So there really was a patty pan. But my patty pans are in the kitchen cupboard. Well, I did never. Next time I want to have a party, I will invite Cousin Tabitha Twitchin. And that is the end of that story.